How's it going, class? So as you'll notice today, I'm sitting in our 2011 SAAB 94X, my favorite vehicle of our fleet. And I've got the display here, the instrument cluster. There's a couple of lights that are on. One that we're going to be focusing on today is our airbag light. Okay. Also, the customer has told us that they have a little issue. Here in the rear view camera display, our wheels are straight, but the vehicle thinks we're going to turn hard left into the car next to us. So we've got a couple of issues that have gone wrong here. I'm going to put the vehicle back in park, and I've got our scan tool plugged in. And what I've done is I've just done a complete code scan of every module on the vehicle. So we've got 3 codes in the engine, 1 in the transmission, 2 in the anti-lock, airbags. So we've got all these modules on here, and once we scroll down, it'll give us a description. Okay, so we're not too concerned about the engine codes today. Anti-lock brakes, so pump motor circuit for the ABS. Now this is also interesting. Steering position signal plausibility failure. Students, why don't you go ahead and write that code down, C0710. Okay? As far as the description goes here, steering position signal plausibility failure. Alright? We might come back to that one. And then airbag. So we've got our airbag fault codes here. Driver steering wheel airbag deployment loop, stage 2, open circuit. Okay. B0013, go ahead and write that one down. And then here, B0012, driver steering wheel airbag deployment loop, open. Okay, so we've looked at the entire codes on the entire vehicle. Now let's go ahead and get into service information, and a couple of purposes for this lab today. We are looking into those fault codes a little bit more. I'll have you do a description and operation. Once you punch in those codes, you'll have to take a screenshot of those and submit them in the assignment. But also, we need to look up the steering wheel and airbag removal procedure. So you'll need to attach that in your assignment as well. In particular, I need you to tell me, after we've disconnected the battery or made the SRS system safe to work on, how much time needs to pass after we've made that system safe before we can actually start tearing into the airbag and removing it. Alright, so we're going to disconnect our negative battery post. We're going to let the vehicle sit for a specified amount of time as per service information. Then we're going to start removing the airbag. Okay, so now we've let our vehicle rest for the specified amount of time. We're ready to work on her disconnect the airbag. Now, service information is a little vague. It says there's 2 holes. Turn one so that one of them is up and the other is down. Most of the time, vehicles will have holes on either side of the steering wheel right here, where you can insert a blunt object to release the spring. This particular vehicle, what you've got to do is you've got to pull out on the steering wheel, and then you've got to twist it one way. I've already removed the little 7mm screw on this side. You do the same thing with this side, 7mm screw. There's also a 7mm screw underneath right here. But once you remove that, this top cover piece comes up and off. And then what you can do is turn the steering wheel, and then with your finger you can go on the back side of the steering wheel here until you find a hole. Okay, so you'll insert your blunt object in here, and you'll just kind of fish around. Okay, so you can see that side of the airbag has now released. Okay, so now we're going to turn the steering wheel the other way. We're going to find our hole here. We're going to insert our blunt object. We're going to release it there. Okay, so once I pull this out here, I'm just going to pull it back straight. So now I've got the airbag off. And now I can remove these airbag clips. Sorry, not the best view for you here. Okay, these are terminal position assurance clips that you need to just gently okay, now we can go ahead and disconnect the connector. Alright. Okay, there we go. There's our airbag. So here's the springs. These springs aid in return when you push on the steering wheel for the horn. Okay. And then right in here, you'll see these springs. Okay, that's what holds or retains the airbag in. So when we were turning the steering wheel and trying to find that hole was back here, and then we inserted our tool in here. We were able to push down and release that. You see how that moves? So that's what we were able to do. Okay, so now we've got our airbag removed. Okay, now it's really important that you, when you're doing this, if you're removing the steering wheel, or removing the airbag, or replacing the clock spring, you want to make sure that your wheels are straight outside, which they are. I've already made sure of that. And then also our steering wheel is straight here. Now obviously if you need an alignment, if your toe's off or you need your steering wheel adjusted, that has implications here. But you'll see we've got a big bolt here, a big Torx bolt, looks like a T45 or T50, and we'll get that removed and move on to our next step. Okay, if you'll notice, I'll zoom in here so you can see. There is an indication mark here on the steering wheel and also on the steering column itself, or the shaft here. Okay, so both of those are indexed so that you can put the steering wheel on straight. And most of the time there's some gaps here between teeth so that there's only one way you can put the steering wheel on. Now, take you back down memory lane. On the really old SAABs, pre-94, they didn't have these indexing marks, so sometimes if the car was driving straight and the customer complained of the steering wheel being off to one side or another, you just pull the cover off, because in those days they didn't have airbags in the front, and then you'd undo the bolt, pull the steering wheel off, move it one tooth and put it back on. But this is not the case with this one here. So we need to make sure before we yank this steering wheel off that we disconnect all of the connectors. Okay, so here's our airbag connectors. And sometimes if you just take the steering wheel and give it a rotate back and forth, that'll slide right off. Sometimes there will be holes in here to install a steering wheel puller tool. Or sometimes if you really want to, you can take a dead blow hammer and hit the side. I don't recommend using your palm, just because over the years that gets really hard on your hands. So now we've slid this guy out here. Remove our connectors. Alright. Okay. Alright, now what I want to show you here is what we call the clock spring. Now, if you remember back to the previous video where we had our issue with the car basically wanting to back into the car next to us, that's because you'll see right here, this is a window, a sight glass, and if this clock spring is installed correctly, there will be a yellow dot inside to where you can see. So we're going to spin it and see if we can get it back in place. You know, if you remember, we had several fault codes for driver airbag circuit open or short. That would be, that could be this connector as well. This has had several classes worth of students help it out over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this. Alright, so this was 2 whole revolutions off. Now you can see our orange or our yellow piece in there. Our sight glass is good to go. I have had a couple of instances in the shop when I was working. We had a car that was wrecked, and the body shop had installed the clock spring wrong. So sometimes there isn't a sight glass. Sometimes it'll just come from the factory or from the parts department with a nice piece of tape on it. Okay, and obviously you'll take the tape off before you slide it in there, but you want to make sure that you don't disorient it, or you're going to have steering wheel sensor issues. So, okay, well there we are, fully removed. That's as far as we're going to go today. But as you can see, the clock spring, 4 screws right here. If you do needed to replace that, we'd pull that off and install a new one. So, hopefully that gives you enough information to fulfill the rest of your assignment there. And we've got the car running. Let's see if rotating that clock spring changed anything at all. Okay, look at that, such a deal. Now we're going ahead, backing up backwards. Okay. So because we had the battery disconnected, fault codes were stored, but if you'll notice, the airbag light is still on, which means those wires were probably broken inside that protective coating on the wires. So anyway, not bad, right? Okay, hope you guys have a great day.